What is this? No, seriously. Tell me what I'm looking at right now. Oh my god, this thing is massive. Wait. Touch? What am I touching here? No. No. Please. Make it stop. Make it stop now, please. Alright, let's think about what we just saw for a minute. So this thing decided to dance after I pressed this button, which literally makes no sense at all, but I'm just gonna go with it. So it decided to play a little dance animation after I pressed this button, and that actually made me realize that, yeah, animations, they do make up a big part of Roblox, because, I mean, look at me. I'm literally being animated as I walk. I'm being animated as I jump. Animation is just one of those things that are very essential to Roblox, especially when it comes to characters or NPCs, because animations give the players or characters or even NPCs that liveliness to them. So in this episode, I'm going to be showing you how to create an animation and how to add them into your game so that you know how all this stuff works out. Because creating animations is a very important skill to have when it comes to being a game developer. So that's what we're about to do. But with that being said, let's go straight into implementing animations on Roblox. Now that we understand it, let's start implementing animations inside of our game. Now, you're probably thinking right now, where the heck do we even make animations if this is your first time doing it? Roblox has this feature that allows us to create animations using an animation editor to then publish that to Roblox and use that in our own game. So I'm going to give you a basic rundown of how this editor works, but first thing we have to do is that we have to add a rig to our workspace so that we can animate it. And if you don't know what a rig is, it's basically an object that has a skeletal structure where we can manipulate its parts and add animations to them to make it human-like. So if you imagine this NPC right here to have a structure for legs, a structure for a torso, a structure for arms, and a structure for the head, all of those combined make up a rig. And so that's basically what we're going to do here is we're going to be adding our own rig to be able to animate with, because we can't animate with just a part. A part alone isn't going to help us animate our animations. We need a skeletal structure to be able to do this for us. Luckily, Roblox allows us to do that as well. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go on the top, go to Avatar, and we're going to click this button called Rig Builder. So if we click this, then it gives us a bunch of options to choose a rig that we want to generate. So we can choose an R15 or R6 character, we can choose masculine or feminine body, and we have all these options that are down here. Now you can pick your own avatar to import, or you can pick a block avatar. These are usually my go-to when it comes to generating a rig. So I'm just gonna pick my avatar, but you can also pick block avatar. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so now that we've pressed that, Roblox generated a rig for me using my own character, and it added it to the workspace. So we can take this and we can drag this around however we want. Like, we can go on the right side and open it up, and we can see that everything here basically makes up our player's character if we were to play the game with my accessories and animate script, all the parts that we need, and just things like that. So we have a rig. Now what we need to do is open up the animation editor so that we can start creating animations. So on the top, there should be another button called Animation Editor under the animation section. So we're going to press this, and what you should see down here is a new animation editor window. I'm actually going to get rid of my output down here so that we can see it better. But yeah, down here it says select a rig to animate or create a new rig by selecting Rig Builder under the Avatar tab. But since we've already created our rig, we're just going to simply click our rig. And now down here, it says create an animation to start. So there currently is no animation for this rig that we just created, so we're gonna have to create a new animation. We're just gonna call this animation test 1, just because why not? So we're gonna hit enter, and now what we should see is this grid down here, while also seeing this animation editor with this timeline. Now, we basically have this timeline down here, and if we click and hold this blue bar, then we can drag this along the timeline from start to finish, with the animation that we're creating. There's also some other things like playing the animation or skipping the animation or looping the animation. There's even more customizable options on the right side of the screen. I'm going to go over some of these in just a little bit. But for right now, what you need to know is that this timeline is very essential when it comes to timely accurate animations when you're creating them. So if you're not familiar with Roblox rigs, especially R15 rigs, essentially this character right here is comprised of 15 parts. That is the head, the right upper arm, the right lower arm, the right hand, and the same thing on the left side. Then we have the upper torso, the lower torso, and then we have the left upper leg, the left lower leg, and the left foot, and then the same thing on the right side. So what we can do is we can select any of these parts, like let's say the right upper arm, for instance. It's going to give us a rotation indicator to allow us to move this character's arm. So because this is a rig, if we moved, let's say, the upper arm, then it's going to also move the lower arm and the hand as well. And as you can see, when we did this, there's two things that happened. On the bottom left, it shows us on a rig hierarchy that we changed the right upper arm, and we can see it down here with the position and rotation. We've now changed the rotation to 45 degrees this way on the 0-second timeline. So this is another thing that changed. It gave us this keyframe that shows us that we were able to make a change to the animation at this specific time frame. So let's say we decide to change this time frame to 5, I believe this is milliseconds, but I could be wrong about that. It's basically 5 frames down the line. If we were to, let's say, now change our upper torso, so I'm going to click on the upper torso, and let's say we move it this way, then what's going to happen is we added a new keyframe at 5 seconds. But if we, let's say, decide to move this back this way, you can see that Roblox automatically animates the rig for you based on the keyframes that you put down on the timeline. So if we started back at 0, it's going to start with my hand going out, with my arm going out this way. But since I added a keyframe to move my upper torso this way when it reaches 5 frames, it's going to frame by frame move to the keyframe. And if we, let's say, move this again to 10 seconds, if we wanted to move this arm this way, if for whatever reason, then once again, it's going to start at 0 seconds, and then it's going to move according to the frames in between both keyframes. And now that we do have this, what we can do is we can play the animation that we just created. If we start back at the beginning and then we hit play, then what we can do is preview the animation. So let's hit play. We can see that from when we started to the last keyframe, it played our animation. And if we were to implement this in Roblox Studio, we're going to fire this animation, and then it's going to stop right here and then completely stop the animation. Not freeze it, but it's just going to stop the animation. If we wanted to, let's say, loop it, then we can press this button to toggle looping animation. So once this is on, if we play this once, then it's just going to keep looping the animation, and this would also be apparent when we implement this in our game. But we're not going to put looping on, so we're just going to turn it back off. Okay, so now that we have our first animation, let's publish this to Roblox. So how we're going to do this is we're going to click these 3 little dots that's next, these 3 little dots on the left side. We're going to click this, and then what we're going to do is say publish to Roblox, and it's going to show our pop-up to create this animation. So we're just going to call this test 1, and it's going to be created by me. We don't really have to do much here, except delete local instances. I would recommend checking this on, at least thinking about what this does. I would say you should usually just have this on. I don't really see much of a reason to have this turned off, so that's what we're going to do. So let's hit submit, and now we should have our published animation. So as you know, when you publish an animation on Roblox, it's going to give a customized ID. So this is the ID that we're going to use to implement in Roblox Studio. We're going to copy this, and we're going to hit close, and we're also going to back out of this animation editor now that we have our animation to use. Okay, so we have our animation ID, but how do we add this animation to our game? The first thing that we're going to have to do is create an animation instance with the ID that we just copied. because this is going to be the animation within the game that we're going to use to animate inside of our game. This is basically what it's going to look like. If we, let's say, went onto workspace, hit the plus sign, and then we decided to search up animation, we're going to click animation, and there's basically one property here that we really care about, and that's going to be the animation ID. And obviously, this is going to be the ID that we just copied when we uploaded our animation. So we're just gonna right click on this, hit paste, and then that should be the numbered ID right there. And then we're gonna hit enter. So now that we have our animation here that we just created, let's also rename this to test animation 1, just for the sake of it. We have our animation, but how do we make it so that our character will be playing this animation? What we can do is we can add a local script inside of our character to be able to play this animation after a specific number of seconds so that we can see that it's working properly. What we can do is add a local script inside of starter character scripts. This is usually where I would be using my animations. It would be inside of the character and ideally the starter character scripts. So we're going to hit the plus sign and we're going to add a local script. And we're also going to take our animation and we're going to put this right inside of our local script so that we have easy access to it. So what we're going to do is make reference to our animation by saying local animation equals script. And we're also going to throw it in a wait for child statement as well, so that the script has enough time to look for it. So it's going to be test animation 1. So this is going to be our animation script. Now, in order to activate this animation, we're going to need access to our character's humanoid because the humanoid is what makes our character lifelike, human-like, and those sorts of things. So what we're going to do is make reference to our character. And as you know, anything that's contained in starter character scripts is going to be a direct child of our character. So our character simply is just going to be the parent. So we're just going to say local character equals script.parent. And then through that, we're going to find the humanoid of that character. So we're going to say local humanoid equals character wait for child humanoid. So we have access to our character's humanoid now. Now, here's the weird thing about this. So we actually can't use this animation directly for the character that we're trying to animate. What we have to do is convert this animation to an animation track. And this is essentially the animation that contains everything that we need in order to play back an animation and use it whenever we want. Because if you see our animation right here, the only thing it has is animation ID. It doesn't have any special properties that allow us to configure, run, or even stop or do anything with this animation that we have. It has no properties, which is why we have to convert this animation to what's called an animation track instance that allows us to do all these things. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to say local animation track equals humanoid. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our humanoid and we're going to load in our animation that's going to be embedded within the humanoid. So we're going to say humanoid : load animation, open and close parentheses, and then we're going to throw in our animation inside of our arguments here. So now we have an animation track, and this is embedded directly into our character's humanoid. Well, our player's humanoid when we join into the game. Okay, so now that we have our animation track, we can play our animation using the play method in the animation track. So what we're going to do is we're going to wait a few seconds so that our character can load into the game before we play the animation. So we're going to say task.wait 5 seconds, and then we're simply just going to say animation track : play, open and close parentheses. That's it. That's all we have to do. So now if we go into the game, hit test and hit play, once we're in the game, after about a couple seconds, it should play the animation on its own. All right, so I'm into the game after a set amount of time. Then we should see that the animation did play, but it was very subtle because the animation lasts like 6 milliseconds or something. And another thing was that it didn't fully play the animation because it was being overridden by our idle animation. Because it's quite confusing. We played the animation, but it wasn't what we animated it to be. It barely lifted our arm and it barely moved our character. Why is that the case? I'm going to show you once we move back into the animation editor. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the animation editor and use our rig. I'm going to move this down here so that we have a good view of it. So what happened when we played the animation? It certainly did not do this, that's for sure. It sort of moved the arms up and it moved our character's torso to the right side, just slightly. But why did it do that? Why is it not doing this? I want you to understand the concept of what's known as animation priority. And so when our character is playing the game, our character is constantly playing an animation, which, as you know, it's the idle animation. If we have multiple animations playing at the same time, like the idle animation plus this animation that we're trying to play, then it's going to try to prioritize one animation over the other. And if both of them are in the same priority, then it's going to be some weird mixture of the two. So what we have to do is we have to add more priority to our animation over our idle animation. And the way we change our animation priority is by going on the left side here, clicking on the three dots, and there should be an option that says set animation priority. So these are basically all the options for our animation priority. And just to put things into perspective, core is like the least priority option. As you can see down here, there's idle, which is basically our idle animation. So core is underneath idle. What we want is to put this above idle. And usually the best place to do this is in action, because action has more priority over idle, but it also has more priority over movement. Let's say if our character was moving. Since we can say this is basically an action. So instead of core, we're going to set this to action. So now that we've done that, there isn't any visible change to this thing, but we've now added more priority to this animation. And in order to see our change, what we have to do is publish this game to Roblox again. So we're going to hit the three dots, we're going to hit publish to Roblox, and we're going to overwrite an existing asset, which is going to be our test one right here. So we're going to hit submit. And now our animation should be updated. Our ID is still the same, so we don't have to worry about that. But let's now go into the game and see what happens with our animation now that we've updated our animation priority. Okay, and as you can see, we were able to see that our character was fully able to move to the right, and we were also able to wave our hand up fully because it completely overrode our idle animation until this animation stopped. So that's an interesting thing to know about when it comes to animation priority when you're creating your animations. Okay, but now there's more animation properties that I want to quickly go over when it comes to the animation editor and also what we can do through script. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to extend our duration of these keyframes so that it can appear slower so that we can actually see the animation happen. So I'm just going to move these along so that once we play the animation, then we should be able to see it better. So yeah, now we have like a better glimpse of how this animation looks because it's closer to being a full second rather than stopping like halfway through or something like that. I'm also going to turn on looping so that when we play it once, we can constantly see it playing from start to finish and then start to finish and then start to finish, and then you get the idea. So let's now publish this back to Roblox by overwriting our already existing animation. So we're going to go to test one, submit, and then there we go. So now I'm going to introduce you to some more properties with animation track that we can use to further continue animating, to further continue using our animation. So I want to introduce you to some notable properties or methods that people may or may not be confused about. So I don't want this to be an in-depth guide to scripting animations on Roblox. If you want to experiment with this stuff yourself, you can go on the Roblox Developer Hub. I'll also put a link to that in the description to just see what there is that animation track has to offer that you can try yourself. But one of those things that people may be tripped up about is this method called AdjustSpeed. So we have our animation playing that is playing at normal speed that lasts for 0.9 seconds. But if we want to adjust the speed to be something faster, we can add a multiplier to the normal speed of our animation track. So by default, the animation speed is 1. But if we want it to be, let's say, twice the speed, then we're going to put down 2 as our speed that we want to adjust the animation to. So it's going to look something like this. We're going to say animation track colon adjust speed, and then in parentheses, we're going to put 0. Let's say 2, so that it's very slow whenever we decide to play the animation once we're in the game. So let's see what happens if we go into the game and hit play. All right, and as you can see, the animation is playing very slowly until it reaches the end and then it loops back to the beginning. So this seems to basically work as expected. However, there is something that I do want you to keep in mind when it comes to adjusting the speed. You have to be very careful about using adjust speed when it comes to your animations that you're trying to change. So we have adjust speed set equal to 0.2 after we played the animation track, but let's see what happens if we take adjust speed and place it before playing the animation. Let's go into the game and see what happens now when we do that. What ends up happening is adjust speed gets completely ignored and the animation is playing at normal speed despite us wanting to change the speed of the animation. And here's one thing that I can hypothesize about why this happens. So if we go back to our script, animation track colon play, essentially what this does is it plays the animation at normal speed regardless of if you changed the speed of the animation track. So if we hit play, then it's going to start initially at the normal speed. So in order to change the speed of the track that's currently being played, we have to adjust the speed after we play the animation. And that's my hypothesis on it. I don't know if that's true, but it seems to make sense if that is the case. So that is one thing I do want to mention when it comes to adjusting the speed of the animation, because I've had this issue many times in the past, and this has confused a lot of people. We have the ability to detect when an animation is playing and when an animation is stopping, or those sorts of things. But one thing we don't know is knowing when we've reached a certain point within the animation. So if I were to go back to my animation editor, let's say we were at this point specifically. How can we tell if we reach this point of the animation? What we can do is use what's called a marker to mark this specific frame within the timeline so that once we play the animation and we reach this point within the animation, then we're going to tell our local script to activate an event because we've reached this point in the timeline. So here's how we add a marker. We're basically going to be in the timeline that we want to add this marker in, and we're going to right click and say add animation event here. So we're going to hit this button and it's going to show this window. So what we can do is add an event here by clicking on add event, and it's going to give us 2 boxes, one of them for the event name and the other one for a parameter. So for the event name, what we're going to do is give it a name. So we're probably just going to say like halfway, and then what's interesting is we can add a parameter here, and I'm going to show you what this parameter does, but for right now, we could just say something random like parameter 1. It doesn't really matter too much. You can even leave this blank if you want, but what we're going to do is hit save. We can see this little marker placed on this time frame right here. So now what we're going to do is go and publish this into Roblox again so that we can have an updated animation when we script it. Okay, so let's go back to our script. So let's drop 2 lines down here, and what we're going to do is we're going to use a function that allows us to detect when we reach a certain point in the timeline to activate an event. So this is what it's going to look like. We're going to say animation track colon get marker reached signal. And what we're going to do here is say open and close parentheses, and we're going to specify the name of the event, which if you remember, it was event 1. And we're going to connect this by saying colon connect by creating a function, open and close parentheses. And then in here, we're going to add in our parameters, which if you remember, we did that when we created our marker. So then we're going to hit enter. And so now whatever we do inside of here, it's going to fire after we trigger this event 1 marker in the animation. ideally when we reach it when we're playing the animation. So for right now, what we can just do is just print out whatever the parameter is inside of here. It's called halfway. I seem to be forgetting things for some reason. Okay, but let's go back into the game and now see the change for ourselves. All right, and as you can see, once we're halfway through our animation, it's being printed out in the output, our parameter that we specified inside of the event when we created it in the animation editor. So it's going to constantly do this because we have the animation looped. If you remember from the timeline, it's basically going to be in the halfway mark to signify that the event has been fired, and it's going to print out our parameters down here. So this is how we can detect when we reach a certain frame in the animation. And I recommend doing it this way because I know there's other ways of doing it like keyframe reached, but that's generally not recommended when it comes to this. So that is basically how you detect when you reach certain frames within the animation. So for this last part of the video, I want to debunk two very common misconceptions that people have about animations so that you don't go through with these issues. The first one is that it's not possible to access animations that are created by other people directly using their animation within your own game, or if this was an animation that was created within a group that's not being used by that group owner. What I'm trying to get at here is that Roblox has this privacy policy when it comes to sharing animations. If let's say you had a game that was created within a group, if the animations are not created within that group directly, then you can't use the animation in your Roblox game. And if this was a game that was created by a single player, all animations that are used within that game has to be created by the owner. It cannot be, you can't use an animation that was created by other people. So you might think, oh, well, okay, if I can't use animations created by other people, then I basically just have to create all my animations from scratch. And to that I say, technically yes, but there are workarounds when it comes to this. So it actually is possible to use animations created by other people if that person created a rig with an animation saved onto it and uploaded it as a model. So I'm going to show you an example of what this looks like. So I'm going to go to the toolbox and I'm going to search up something like Club Penguin Dance. And then there should be this animation right here with this rig. So I'm going to open up this character. And there should be something here called anim saves that basically saved all of the animations that are within this character. But you might notice that this is a keyframe sequence. This is not an animation. So when we open this up, we have all the keyframes within the timeline to have a real animation. It's just now we have to convert this into an animation that we can upload to Roblox. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the animation editor and I'm going to go and hit the three dots and I'm going to create a new animation. So I'm going to call this dance 1. So from what we see here, we have all the keyframes in this timeline to be able to play the animation. So if I play the animation, then you can see that the Club Penguin dance is being played right here, which is very fascinating. Like this was created by another person. So with this in mind, we have the animation here. And what we can now do is publish this animation to Roblox as if it was our own animation. So this could be our club dance. We're just going to call this Club Dance 1. And we can now check this off, hit OK. And now we have our own animation that we can play. So we can hit copy, hit close. And what I've decided to do was I've created a local script that basically plays an animation if I decide to hit the R key using user input service. But before I can test this, here's another conflicting issue. If we go to the character, we can see that this guy only has 6 parts if we don't include the humanoid root part. This follows an R6 character model. What we were working with before was following an R15 model. So in order for us to use this animation, we ourselves have to be an R6 character. So we're gonna have to switch over to an R6 model. So I'm gonna go to my avatar and quickly change myself to an R6 character, because if you're an R15 character, you can't use R6 animations, and the same thing works with the other way around. Okay, so I've now loaded into the game using an R6 character, so I only have 6 parts, not 15. If I hit R, then it should be playing the Club Penguin Dance animation, because I have successfully been able to take somebody else's animation that's free of use, and I uploaded that myself under my own profile, and I'm now able to use it in my own game. So this was just something I wanted to address when it came to animations and some misconceptions that may come about when it comes to this, because I was very confused with this stuff in the past. So I want you to be aware of these sort of things when it comes to uploading animations onto Roblox and using other people's animations. But with that being said, we've now reached the end of the video, and if it felt like I went really fast with this video, I apologize, because animating is a whole sector when it comes to game development. And there's a lot of things that go on when it comes to creating animations and uploading them. So this video wasn't an in-depth guide to animating, but at least from what we can say so far from this video, we were introduced to the animation editor. We were able to create our own animations and understand the editor a little bit and implement them inside of Roblox Studio, and also address some concerns and misconceptions that animations might have when it comes that you might have when it comes to animations if you were to work with these down the line. So with that being said, that's going to be it for this episode. I hope you found this video to be very informative, and I will see you in the next episode. Take care.